Welcome to Mind Clarity, where we don't just listen to ideas, we transform the way we think, believe, and create our reality. If you're ready to step into your highest self and truly understand the power of I am, make sure you join our membership and become part of a community that is committed to growth, awareness, and limitless possibility. At some point, you begin to understand that nothing in this universe is random. Everything that happens is part of a larger movement, guided by something far greater than any individual. Call it what you want, God, Source, the divine, but it is all rooted in the awareness of I am. There's a powerful idea from the I am teachings that says the very first expression of every person, whether spoken out loud, thought silently, or felt deeply, is I am. That statement is your recognition of your own divine nature. And for those of us trying to understand and live by these simple but powerful laws, it becomes essential to watch our thoughts and words carefully. Every time you say something like, I am not, I can't, or I don't have, you are, without realizing it, shutting down that powerful presence within you. You are limiting yourself. That's why it's so important to become aware of how you use these words. Instead, choose statements like, I am strong, I am healthy, I am at peace, even if your current reality seems to say otherwise. As you go deeper into this, you'll notice that placing I am in front of a thought and holding it in your mind is one of the most powerful ways to shape your life. It's about recognizing your connection to something greater. The teachings of Neville Goddard and similar ideas all point to this same truth. From that understanding, I've come to see what I call 5 core foundations for living from the state of your wishes already fulfilled. The first of these is imagination. Some of the greatest minds in history have emphasized how powerful imagination really is. Think about this. Everything that exists today was once just an idea in someone's mind. If you want something new to appear in your life, you must first be able to see it internally. Your imagination belongs entirely to you. No one else controls it. You can place anything inside it, regardless of what others say or what your current circumstances look like. Even if all evidence points in the opposite direction, you still have the ability to imagine yourself as the person you want to become. When you combine imagination with the feeling of I am, you begin to align yourself with what you desire. You start living from that reality internally before it shows up externally. That's where real change begins. There was a time in my life when I received a serious diagnosis. For a while, I allowed myself to believe the limitations that came with it. But eventually, I made a decision. I chose to stop identifying with fear and start connecting with something deeper within me. And from that point on, I experienced a level of strength and aliveness that I had never felt before. Life, in a simple sense, is temporary for all of us. But that doesn't mean you can't live each moment with power, purpose, and awareness. It's not about pretending you'll live forever. It's about choosing how you experience the time you do have. When you truly understand the power of your imagination, something shifts. You stop reacting to life and start creating from within. You begin to feel a sense of control, not over everything happening outside, but over how you define yourself. That's why imagination matters so much. It's not just a tool, it's the starting point of everything. Even great thinkers have said that imagination goes beyond knowledge. Knowledge has limits, but imagination has none. I like to think of my imagination as a protected space. It's like having a sign in my mind that says, "Do not disturb." Nothing enters unless I allow it. No negative belief, no outside opinion, no past experience gets to take control of what I choose to see for myself. You have that same power. You don't have to let your past define what's possible for you. You don't have to accept someone else's limitations as your truth. What you place in your mind consistently will eventually shape your reality. So be careful with what you allow in. Don't fill your imagination with doubt or fear. Don't replay old stories that no longer serve you. Instead, use it intentionally. See yourself as the person you want to be. Feel it. Believe it. Because in the end, it all starts with I am. Whatever follows those words begins to shape your life. Being labeled a disturbing element doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It simply means you carry a mindset that refuses to accept limits. It means you hold on to the idea that anything is possible. And if you really think about it, that belief changes everything. There's a powerful truth that says when you align with something greater, nothing is off the table. When we hear that all things are possible, we have to ask ourselves, what does that actually exclude? The answer is nothing. It doesn't exclude the ability to rise beyond limitations, to heal, to create abundance, or even to reshape the direction of your life in ways that seem impossible right now. I truly believe that if more people began to think this way, we could shift the entire energy of this world. Imagine a collective mindset where people consistently see a reality rooted in love, kindness, awareness, and a deep connection to something higher. If enough individuals hold that vision in their imagination, it starts to become more than just an idea. It becomes a force. This is why the kind of content we allow into our minds matters so much. What we watch, what we listen to, and what we repeatedly expose ourselves to all shape our beliefs. There's a big difference between constantly consuming negativity, conflict, and division versus filling your mind with possibility, growth, and higher awareness. One feeds limitation, the other expands it. Even great thinkers have pointed this out. Logic can help you move step by step, but imagination has no boundaries. It can take you far beyond what seems realistic, and that's where real creation begins. The second principle that becomes important here is learning how to live from the end result. This is where many people struggle, because it requires you to think and feel as if something already exists before you can physically see it. There's a concept that teaches us to speak about things that haven't appeared yet as if they already have. That means you don't wait for proof before you believe. You choose the belief first. You mentally step into the version of yourself who already has what you desire. This isn't about pretending. It's about aligning your inner world so strongly with a desired outcome that it begins to shape your outer experience. You call it into existence by embodying it in your thoughts and feelings. I've used this approach in my own life in very practical ways. Whenever I begin working on something new, like writing, I don't wait until it's finished to believe in it. I start with the end already in mind. I visualize it as complete. I see it, I feel it, and I treat it as something real long before it actually exists. There have been times when I've created physical reminders of that vision, placing something in front of me that represents the finished result, even when nothing has been written yet. Every time I sit down, I look at it and connect with that feeling of completion. It becomes a quiet but powerful statement. This already exists. I'm just bringing it into form. The same mindset applied during one of the most challenging periods of my life. When I received a diagnosis that came with a lot of negative expectations, I made a conscious decision not to accept those limitations as my identity. Information kept coming in, telling me what I should expect, what couldn't be changed, what the outcome would be. But I chose to focus on something else entirely. I held on to the belief of I am well. Not because I was ignoring reality, but because I understood the power of what I was affirming. I didn't want my mind filled with statements that reinforced weakness or fear. I wanted to stay aligned with strength, health, and possibility. When people close to me shared information that contradicted that belief, I had to gently set boundaries, not out of denial, but out of awareness. I knew that what I consistently focused on would shape my experience. This is what it really means to live from the end. It's choosing your inner truth before the outer world confirms it. It's deciding who you are, what you believe, and what you expect without waiting for permission from circumstances. When you combine this with the power of I am and a protected imagination, something begins to shift. You stop reacting to life as it is, and you start creating from the life you've already claimed within. And over time, that internal reality has no choice but to express itself outwardly. The reason I understand this so deeply is because I've practiced placing these ideas into my own imagination and choosing to live from them. There's a powerful teaching that says you must stop letting your senses control what you believe. In simple terms, don't let what you see, hear, or experience right now convince you that your desire isn't already real. If your current reality seems to contradict what you want, you're being asked to look beyond it. Ignore appearances. Ignore temporary conditions. Even ignore the evidence your senses are showing you if it tells you that your goal isn't possible. Instead, settle into the feeling that you already are who you want to be. When you do that, something incredible happens. You begin to align with a deeper part of yourself, the part that is limitless, creative, and connected to something far greater. In that state, you're no longer just hoping or wishing. You are creating in partnership with that infinite intelligence within you. And when you really grasp this, it becomes more than just an idea. It turns into a knowing. You stop seeing yourself as small or separate, and you begin to recognize that you carry a powerful force inside you. You don't need constant proof from the outside world anymore, because your inner certainty becomes stronger than anything you can see. This completely flips the way most people think. Most of us are taught to believe something only after we see evidence of it. But the truth works in the opposite direction. You don't wait for it to show up first. You believe it so deeply that it has no choice but to appear. That's why the idea is simple. You will see it only after you truly believe it, not before. To step into a new version of yourself, you must assume that you already are that person. And then you live your life from that belief. Not occasionally, not when it's convenient, but consistently. You carry it in your thoughts, your feelings, and your expectations. This can feel challenging at first because everything around you seems to be telling you something different. Your senses are always reporting what already exists, what has already happened. But what you're creating comes from a deeper level, one that isn't limited to what's visible. What we perceive through our senses is only a tiny fraction of reality. There is so much more that exists beyond what we can measure or see. And that unseen space is where imagination operates. It's where possibilities are formed before they ever take shape in the physical world. Most people stay focused on what is already in front of them, forming beliefs based only on past experiences and current circumstances. But that keeps them stuck in a loop. If you want something different, you have to move your attention away from what is and place it on what could be. Using I am statements in your imagination is the first step. But truly living from the end means going beyond just thinking about it. It means feeling it as real. It means acting internally as if it's already done. And the most powerful part is that this doesn't require validation from anyone else. You don't need approval. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to announce it or prove it. This is an inner process. It's a quiet decision you make within yourself to claim a new identity, to hold on to it, and to trust it fully. No outside confirmation is required. You don't have to search for permission. You don't have to wait for the perfect moment. You don't have to rely on what the world is telling you right now. You simply decide within yourself who you are, and you live from that place. What makes this idea so powerful is that it shifts your role in life from someone who reacts to circumstances into someone who shapes them from within. Most people are trained, almost conditioned, to look at the outside world first and then decide how they feel and what they believe. If things look good,
they feel confident. If things look bad, they feel discouraged. But this teaching turns that pattern completely upside down. It says your inner state comes first, and the outer world follows.
When you really start applying this, you notice how often your thoughts are tied to what you currently see. If something isn't working yet, the mind immediately starts creating doubt. That doubt then reinforces the same reality you're trying to change. It becomes a loop. That's why the practice of ignoring appearances isn't about denial. It's about breaking that loop. It's choosing not to let temporary evidence define a permanent belief. There's also something deeper happening when you consistently use "I am" in a conscious way. You're not just repeating words, you're building identity. And identity is what drives everything. People don't get what they want, they express who they believe they are. So if someone constantly says, even internally, "I'm not good enough" or "I can't do this," that becomes the foundation they operate from. But when you start saying, "I am capable," "I am abundant," "I am already that person," you begin to shift the entire structure of how you show up in life. At first, it can feel unnatural because your current reality might not match what you're claiming. But that discomfort is actually part of the transition. You're stepping out of an old identity and into a new one. The key is consistency. Not perfection, but persistence. Returning again and again to the version of yourself you've chosen, even when your senses try to pull you back. Another important part of this is emotional alignment. It's not just about thinking differently, it's about feeling differently. When you live from the end, you allow yourself to experience the emotions of already having what you want. That feeling becomes a signal. It tells your mind and body that this is your new normal. And over time, that internal normal begins to reflect outwardly. You also start to become more selective about what you allow into your mind. Conversations, media, opinions, everything either supports your new identity or weakens it. This doesn't mean you isolate yourself, but you become aware. You stop feeding your mind with constant negativity or limitation. You begin to protect your imagination because you understand that it's not just fantasy, it's the blueprint of your reality. There's a quiet confidence that develops through this process. It's not loud or forceful. It doesn't need validation. It comes from knowing that what you're creating internally is real, even if no one else can see it yet. And that kind of confidence changes how you move, how you speak, how you make decisions. Over time, small things begin to shift. Opportunities appear, ideas come more clearly, and situations start aligning in ways that feel almost too precise to be random. But instead of seeing them as coincidences, you begin to recognize them as reflections of the inner work you've been doing. This isn't about controlling every detail of life. It's about choosing your state of being and trusting that your life will organize around it. When you stop chasing outcomes and start embodying them, the struggle begins to fade. You're no longer trying to force something to happen, you're allowing it to unfold from a place that already feels complete. And the more you stay in that state, the less power your doubts have. They may still show up, but they don't control you anymore. You see them for what they are, old patterns trying to repeat themselves. And instead of following them, you return to your chosen identity. That's really the essence of it. You decide who you are, you feel it as real, and you remain there long enough for life to reflect it back to you. When you keep going deeper into this, you start noticing that your mind is always trying to pull you back to what feels familiar. Even if that familiar state is something you don't want, it's comfortable because it's known. That's why change isn't just about choosing a new thought once. It's about gently but consistently returning to that new state until it becomes your new normal. One of the biggest challenges people face is timing. They expect instant results, and when nothing changes right away, they assume it's not working. But what's really happening is a reorganization beneath the surface. Just like a seed doesn't grow the moment it's planted, your inner assumptions take time to express themselves outwardly. If you keep digging up the seed to check if it's growing, you interrupt the process. The same thing happens when you keep doubting or checking your reality for proof. Patience here doesn't mean waiting passively. It means staying loyal to your inner decision regardless of what's happening externally. It's an active state of trust. You continue thinking, feeling, and identifying with your desired version of yourself, even when there's no visible confirmation yet. Another layer to understand is how subtle your inner conversations are. Most people don't even realize the constant dialogue happening in their mind throughout the day. These quiet thoughts, reactions, and assumptions are shaping everything. So part of this work is becoming aware of those automatic patterns. When something happens, what do you immediately tell yourself about it? Do you reinforce your old identity, or do you gently redirect yourself into your new one? You don't have to fight your thoughts. In fact, resistance often makes them stronger. Instead, you acknowledge them and then choose again. It's a redirection, not a battle. Over time, this becomes easier, and your default thinking begins to shift naturally. There's also a level of trust you develop with yourself. At first, it might feel like you're pretending or imagining something that isn't real. But as you stay consistent, you start to see that your imagination isn't separate from reality. It's the starting point of it. Everything that exists externally was once just an idea, a vision, or a belief held internally by someone. As this understanding deepens, you stop looking for constant reassurance. You don't need signs every day to keep going. You become grounded in your own inner knowing. And that's when things often begin to move more fluidly, because you're no longer creating from a place of doubt or desperation. You might also notice that your reactions to challenges begin to change. Situations that would have discouraged you before don't hit the same way. Instead of seeing them as proof that things aren't working, you see them as temporary and irrelevant to your deeper intention. This shift in perspective keeps you steady. Another important part of this is letting go of the need to control how things happen. The mind loves to figure out every step, every detail. But when you try to force the path, you limit what's possible. There are always more ways for something to come into your life than you can imagine. Your role is to stay aligned with the end result, not to micromanage the journey. When you release that need for control, you create space for unexpected opportunities, ideas, and connections to appear. And often, they show up in ways that feel natural, not forced. It doesn't feel like something out of reach anymore. It starts to feel like something that was always meant for you. You also begin to notice how powerful your emotional state is in shaping your experience. If you spend most of your time feeling stressed, doubtful, or frustrated, that becomes the environment your life reflects. But when you cultivate feelings of calm, certainty, gratitude, and confidence, even before you see results, you're setting a completely different tone for your reality to match. This doesn't mean you have to feel perfect all the time. It means you become aware of where you are emotionally and gently guide yourself back to the state you want to live in. Again, it's about consistency, not perfection. As you continue this practice, your sense of identity becomes more stable. You're no longer easily shaken by outside opinions or temporary setbacks. You know who you are becoming, and that clarity gives you direction. Decisions become easier because they're based on alignment rather than fear. Eventually, this way of thinking becomes natural. You're no longer trying to apply a technique. You're simply living from a different level of awareness. You trust your inner world. You respect your imagination. And you understand that what you hold within will, in time, be reflected outwardly. And once you truly grasp that, you stop chasing life. You stop trying to force outcomes. You begin to live with a sense of quiet certainty,
knowing that what you've already accepted within yourself is on its way, even if you can't see it yet.
Everything comes down to this simple truth. You don't become what you see, you begin to see what you already believe yourself to be. When you stop letting the outside world define you and instead choose your identity from within, you step into a completely different level of power. By holding firmly to I am and living as if your desire is already fulfilled, you align with a force that has no limits. Stay consistent, trust the unseen, and remain rooted in your inner knowing, because the moment you truly believe it, your reality has no choice but to reflect it.